On May 17, 1954, the court handed down a momentous decision. In the field of public education, the doctrine of separate but equal has no place. Separate educational facilities are inherently unequal. The NAACP had been instrumental in winning the most significant civil rights victory since the end of slavery.
I had learned long before that things were not equal and not necessarily fair between the races. But I also knew that if I wanted to progress beyond doing dishes for someone else all my life, that I had to get an education.
As far as the impact of the decision, Brown versus Board of Education of Topeka, Kansas, had, it simply meant that the system under which thousands and thousands of Negroes had been educated prior to that time was dumped out the window. And there could no law be passed that my children could go to this school, and if I were white, they could go to that school.
I was among some of the first blacks that integrated Lloyd Norks High School. And it wasn't a pleasant experience at all.
My brother and I left the public schools when I went to the 7th grade. What I think happened was the university high school, which was the campus school for Western, called my dad and said, we need to talk about some black students coming up here.
My father said, Callahan, you're going to be going to that new high school in the fall, Lloyd Norks. They don't have enough Negroes in the school.
I don't think the family really thought that they would ever let us into the school, but it was a token gesture.
I came to Kalamazoo in 1943 to go to college. I was at Western. At that time, we could not live on the campus. When I say we, I'm referring to minority students. So we all had to live in the city, and we solved the problem by the generosity of local families of color. Instead of paying for board and room, I worked for board and room. Back in those days, that was so common for students to work for part of their schooling that was not unusual. What made it more unusual for me was that I was considered domestic help and going to school on the side.
First day of school, get off the bus, call the N-word. It wasn't all the children, the students. It was a handful. But it was enough to make your life miserable. And they would throw paper balls at us, ball up sheets of paper and just throw it at us, and just nasty stuff. Call us the N-word from the time we got off the bus till we got out of their sight, because we were instructed to go right inside the school. Do not mingle around. Get to your classroom, your homeroom, and try to avoid any kind of confrontation or altercation. Well, we weren't initiating any of it. It was all directed. We were direct targets every day we got off the bus.
We were basically the only blacks in the entire school arena. It was a much tougher school than we got when we were in the public schools. I mean, it was like, what is going on? And we had projects and we had homework, and we never had homework in the public schools. And the projects call for you to have the materials to carry out the project.
Your grades were impacted by teachers that were racist, because racist people raise racist children.
When with outstanding grades and awards, they looked at me and said, "I'm sorry, we can't place you because there are no Negro teachers teaching home economics between Kalamazoo and Chicago, one direction, and here in Detroit, the other direction. There are no black teachers in high school." One of the school board members said, "We'll look into this," and suggested my name, and Dr. Loy Norix, whom the school now is named after, said, "We'll give it a try." I was given a chance to teach at Vine Junior High, 9th grade home economics. There was one black student at the time and one teacher. That was me. And it stayed that way for about 8 years before we got another teacher of color.
My father would say, "Well, it'll get better." I said, "Well, why do I have to do this?" He says, "Somebody has to do it. Somebody." And I told him, "You would do it. Somebody has to start that process."
The measure of one's dignity depends on one's estimate of oneself. It really does not depend, as so many people in this country now seem to believe, on someone else's estimate. It depends, first of all, on what you take yourself to be, what your real standards are, what you think is right, what you think is wrong, what you think life is all about.
Children reacted. The more they were mixed, the harder it was for children to get along. If there were one or two black students in a school, in a class at a time, the relationship was more fluid between the races. The more they began to get equal numbers, then they separated back again into black versus white in a class. So kids had a lot of adjusting to do. And so the whole city had a lot of trauma for a while.
When I was on the school board, I didn't know how to say, this is a bankrupt system. So I ended up having to deal one-on-one with everybody, So you cure this one or you get rid of him. But there were 5 right behind him because they had a system that allowed them to keep doing that. And so now I don't deal a whole lot with individuals. I mean, that does not mean they don't have an opinion in me, and I certainly don't have I have an opinion of them, and I tell them that. But I'm more interested in the systems that allow racism, prejudice, preference, and all like that to take place. Because if you don't get at that, you live and die, and all you've done is live and die.
Exactly the kind of thing you're doing here is looking at the problem, dissecting it. That's something we have been reluctant to do. And I think your generation is going to be more open-minded to ideas and results and causes and finding a way to solve the problems we have created for ourselves. So I think kind of it's up to you and up to us to look at problems and ways to solve them together, and a willingness to open up to facts.